Everyone knows I love city building games, so serve me up a tasty new morsel that includes interplanetary travel. Oh yeah, it's time to check out Before We Leave. Before We Leave is a chill city builder set on multiple planets. You start on a single island, putting together a home for some Toyland-type characters called peeps. You'll need to provide them with food, water, and housing, then start collecting resources and researching technology to expand your civilization. It's very familiar city building stuff, but what sets Before We Leave apart is its focus on being a very relaxed experience. It's not about stressful micromanagement, and it's not supposed to be. And this philosophy influences a lot about the way the game is designed. A core part of the game is sailing to different islands which provide different resources, and then eventually different planets. This means leaving your other colonies behind where you can't see or manage them. You can of course go back at any time, but to me this defeats the purpose of a city builder in some ways. Once set up, town life will tick along without too much fuss. There's no balancing act, everything will be just fine while you're managing things elsewhere. But I don't want everything to be fine. I want it to be balanced on a knife's edge, falling apart at the seams as I desperately try to piece it back together and it slowly slips through my fingertips. And this she'll be right attitude seems to leave some details dangling. For example, islands can become overcrowded and peeps unhappy, but there doesn't seem to be any real consequence. Sure, they'll move slower, but that's not much of a penalty if you can just stop looking. It's also hard to tell why an individual is unhappy and thus do anything about it. Oh, you're all unhappy. What a shame. It feels a bit hard to care about them, but the most striking thing about this game is definitely the graphics. The world is imagined in hexagonal tiles, which link together to create a stylistic and orderly world. As you move about the globe, new tiles pop in to fill out the map in a way that's both satisfying and delightful. When I first saw the trailer for Before We Leave, I was already pretty hooked. But unfortunately, the look of this game is both its strongest and weakest quality, because the art style just isn't right for a management-based game. These games need immediate clarity, so you can quickly see and understand everything that's happening in a wide view. But Before We Leave trades practicality for pretty. Buildings lack the clear silhouettes needed to make them instantly recognizable, and they end up looking the same, which is confusing. The high contrast and gorgeous sunset make it beautiful, but also difficult to see and makes playing feel more cumbersome. And ultimately, it doesn't matter how cool or dynamic a game looks if that impacts the way that it plays. In fact, there's a number of things that aren't clear or easy to figure out. You need to cycle through several menus to see your stockpile of resources, and it's hard to tell if you've got a glut that needs more storage space. Possibly most annoying for me is that resources aren't removed from your ledger until they're transferred from storage to a new build site. So it'll look like you have enough resources and you'll go to place a bunch of buildings, only for them to all try and use the same 5 tools and nothing gets built. No! Thankfully, you can demolish buildings, and depending on your game settings, you get all your resources back. You can also set up trade routes to transport resources between islands or planets to help them all flourish. But one thing to watch out for when you start traveling to space is space whales. While it might look like a friend, the space whale devours some of your planet and forces you to rebuild. This isn't really a major inconvenience because it doesn't feel difficult to get things going again. But one thing that did bug me was the bugs. I ran into quite a few issues that were either bugs like frozen menus blocking information text boxes, or just a general lack of polish, like the movement and perspective. The scroll speed is considerably slower left and right than it is up and down, which feels frustrating. And the direction you view your village changes as you switch between islands, which is a big no-no for management games. It's cool to see a game try and do something different with the genre, but in doing so, I feel they miss some of the key parts of what makes a good city builder. It seems to have a lot of the building parts in a very chill and simplified way, but not a lot of the management parts, and that very well may appeal to some people. But for me personally, as a fan of the genre, it just didn't give me what I wanted. So I'm giving Before We Leave 2.5 out of 5 rubber chickens.